want to give all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, and double honor to the apostles and the elders, the great millstone, for teaching word of truth and sincerity. Shalom to my fellow Akim across the four corners of the globe, pushing the same word and truth and sincerity in the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, the hopeful elect. I just want to do a quick video, and it's going to be on a couple of articles I was reading online, and just trying to do some research on tares, man, because you got a lot of so-called uh, people that you would think are so-called black men or so-called yeah, Hispanic men or so-called Native American. When hey man, truthfully be speaking, it's a lot of tares amongst Jake, man. And we got a couple of scriptures on it too, but it's definitely a lot of tares amongst Jake, and like Yahweh Shai said, let the wheat grow with the chaff, man. Because when the Lord comes back, he's coming back to destroy. The angels gonna separate the wheat from the tares, man. And it's a lot of tares walking around here. People you think so-called black, Latino, Native American, they really Edomites, or they might be Ammonites, or they might be Moabites, or any other nation outside of Israel. But particularly, a lot of them are, I'm speaking about Esau and Jacob at this point. You got a lot of Jakes out there that look like Edomites, and you got a lot of Edomites out there that look like Jakes. And that's why when we speak about this truth, it's real spiritual, man. And a carnal man, he's not gonna be able to understand. He's not gonna be able to understand that. Yeah, we cuss out the white man, which he's supposed to. Yeah, we cuss him out. We even cuss Jake out, which you're supposed to. But you got some people calling us like Vocab Malone, calling us the Black Hebrew Israelites. It's not about being black, man. It's just about being an Israelite, period. And you are Israelite according to your father's lineage, according to your father's lineage, not your mother. All right, not your mother. So yeah. So anyway, so I just wanted to do a quick video on it. I'm sure more experienced brothers can go a little deeper than me on this subject, but through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shalom, I'm just gonna try to make it simple. So what you see right here on your screen is pictures of W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Now, when you see these pictures, you was like, oh, you might think these people are black men, but actually, what you're looking at is two Edomites. One is Booker T. Washington, the other one is W.E.B. Du Bois. And in the black community, the so-called black community, these men like these are praised for their so-called, mission to bring equality to so-called Negroes, starting Negro movements. When you had W.E. Du Bois, he was part of the beginning of the NAACP. And you had Booker T. Washington, who headed the Tuskegee Institute, which ended up later becoming Tuskegee University. Basically they had they were supposed to be pushing black higher education. All right. And I didn't know this either until like I started to do this lesson, that even Booker T. Washington was a terror. And I know other brothers, they already know this, but just looking in it, I had looked it up, man. Some of the pictures that you seen in the beginning of this lesson, before we got to speak, was all of them were tears. All of them were tears, like people like Lenny Kravitz, people like his daughter, both of them are tears, but they just look like Jakes, man. So let me get the scripture real quick. This is St. Matthew's. Let me start at 24. This is St. Matthew's 13 and 24. Another parable put forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. And that's spiritually talking about when we were in slavery, when we were in captivity, Esau, he laid seed amongst the good seed, which was Israel. He would get our women, he would bet them, he would have kids with them, and them kids would come out looking either high, yellow, which during that time they called them mulattoes. You know what I'm saying? They use the term mulatto. Let me look that up real quick. I know I'm spelling this wrong. Right, mulatto. It says a person mixed white and black ancestry, especially with one white and one black parent. And when you look that up on a Google, it says mulatto is a term used to refer to a person born of one white parent and a black parent, or a person born of a mulatto parent or parents. The term today generally confined to historical context. English speakers mixed white and black ancestry seldom choose to identify themselves as mulatto. And you had a lot of mulattoes. You had Jake during the period of the Moors. You know, we would lay down with them white women, man, and we would have children, and they would come out like this dude right here, Juan de Pereira. You know, so it says the etymology of the term is usually believed to derive from the Spanish Portuguese mulatto, which comes from mula, Galician Portuguese. It says some dictionaries and scholarly works trace the word's origin to Arabic muwalad, which means a person of mixed ancestry. Literally means born. Muwalad literally means born, begotten, produced, generated, brought up. The implication of being born and raised among Arabs, but not Arab blood. Anyway, so you had it says back in the scriptures it says, but while men slept, his enemy came in and sowed tears. And when we slept, we were sleeping in our heritage. We didn't know who we were. We were when we were in slavery, hardcore bondage. We didn't know who we were. We didn't know the Lord's name. And while we slept in our ignorance, Esau came in and he sowed tares amongst the wheat. So it says, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares. Because when you see tares, we'll get a picture of wheat and tares together. Wheat and tares. When you see wheat and tares grow together, they look the same. They look the same, right? So there's a picture right here of wheat and tares. It says wheat before it is fully ripe, tares, lolium temulentum. Okay, and they both look the same. All right. So the scripture says, but when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared tares also. You know. So verse 27. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in our field? From whence then have it tares? And he said unto them, an enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. So, that's part of this parable. But when you look at it in the sense that, like, somebody with a carnal mind would think that, like, yo, you might be wanting to spring up and go kill white people. That might be something that you might say you want to do. But if you do that, you might be killing the Jake, because a lot of them, you got a lot of Jakes out there that look white, and you got a lot of Edomites out there that look like Jakes. And that's what I'm doing this video for, is just to kind of shine a light on that, because and that's why we don't do that, and that's why you see amongst the camps of Great Millstone, you're gonna see Jakes that look white, man, but they're Jakes, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? But you got ignorant people out there, carnal-minded people out there that say, "Oh, we got Edomites in our camps." Well, I know Edomites in our camp because Edomites couldn't bear this burden, man. Plus, the spirit will root them out, which spiritually, that's what the angels going to do. And we're going to get into that in the further scripture. But spiritually, that's what Yahweh Shai going to do by way of the angels, man. It says, but he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And the harvest is the end of the world. When Yahweh, the ultimate end, when Yahweh Shai, since comes back, when Yahweh sends his son Yahweh Shai back along with the angels, and the angels are going to gather them up and it's going to go in and speak about it. It says, let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And another reason why I want to do this video too, the brother Rakaya Kwam from GMS Fear the Most High, he did a small video on Bill Clinton's son. Bill Clinton has a son, and when you look at him, he looks like a Jake, but really he's an Edomite, and he has like 5 kids, like 5 daughters or something, and they all Edomites, and they look like black women, but they're all Edomites, and they're gonna get burnt up when Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai comes back, when those nuclear missiles go out, because there's not gonna be no tears making it in the chariots. You understand what I'm saying? If you see a so-called white man going up in the chariots, he's a Jake, man. If you see if you see a so-called Chinese man or a so-called Arab getting raised up in them chariots, they're all Jakes, man, on their father's lineage, okay? Because that's how lineage is known, through your father, because the father carries what? The seed. And so going back real quick, going back up, it says on verse 25, it says, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares amongst the wheat and went his way. And that's what Esau did. Esau would have sex with the women and he would go his way. There's an article right here. It says, it's off of Bowden .edu. It says master slave relations. It says slave women were forced to comply with sexual advances by their masters on a very regular basis. Consequences of resistance often came in the form of physical beatings. Thus, an enormous number of slaves became concubines, and that's why we're going to have the women in the kingdom, the women of these other nations. They're going to be our concubine, and we're going to have children with them women, man. And guess what? Them children are going to be Israelites, man. It says a number of slaves became concubines for these men. Most often, masters were already bound in matrimony, which caused tension and hatred between the slave and the mistress of the house. Many mulatto or racially mixed children, and we already gave you the definition of mulatto, or racially mixed children, also resulted from the relations because the status of the child followed that of his or her mother. The child of a white man would not be free based upon patriarchal genealogy. These children also became a sore reminder for the mistress of her husband's infidelity. And when you read this article, it goes into it how basically the mistress would give hell to that Edomite Salakia, to that Jake woman. And what was an example of that, when you see that the 12 years a slave, and when you see 12 years a slave, the mistress, she gave that woman hell. Let me see. Yeah, she gave that woman hell, and that's the kind of the shit that they used to do, and during that time, they would kill the babies, they would behead them, but they thought they was beheading a Jake, but really they was beheading a Edomite, man. They was beheading their own people,
Sell her. What's all this? You will sell the niggers.
Right. So she wanted her to sell the negress, the Edomite woman. She wanted her to sell Patsy because her husband had the sexual relations with him and with her, and he felt some type of way about her. But even though he felt some type of way about her, she wasn't getting no special treatment. She was just getting treated like a slave, man. And so this bitch threw a glass at her head and basically cracked her head. Salakia. Okay, and basically cracked her head. And long story short, that's nothing short of what these mistresses would do to their slaves. And it says Maria was a 13-year-old old house servant. One day, receiving no response to her call, the mistress began searching the house for her. Finally, she opened the parlor door, and there was a child with her master. The master ran out of the room, mounted his horse, and rode off to escape. Though well he knew that his wife's full fury would fall upon the young head of his victim. It says the mistress beat the child and blocked her up in a smokehouse. For 2 weeks, the girl was constantly whipped. Some of the elderly servants attempted to plead with the mistress on Maria's behalf, and even hinted that it was master that was to blame. The mistress replied was typical. She'll know better in the future. After I'm done with her, I've done with her. She'll never do the like again through ignorance. It says the mistress was able to take out her aggression on a girl rather than a guilty master. And that's right, because those women ain't had no rights back then. It says right here, it says, rather than a guilty master, I suppose we could emphasize with the frustration, or empathize with the frustration and betrayal these wives felt. But the outlet of their aggression often became the slave girl. Women in the South were quite powerless because the option of divorce was not readily available. The mistress oftentimes punished the slave woman for their husband's wrongdoings, and not only the slave woman, and this was an example of that, but they also did it to the children. They would cut the children's heads off. They would beat the kid, kill a kid, do whatever. And like the article said, when a child was born of a master and a slave's relations, that kid would end up going into slavery, no matter if the dad was free, man. Then you did have stories like the story of Thomas Jefferson, where he supposedly claimed to had released them children after his death. It says in September 1802, political journalist James T. Callender, a disaffected former ally of Jefferson's, wrote in a Richmond newspaper that Jefferson had for many years kept as his concubine one of his own slaves. Her name is Sally Callender, continually adding that Jefferson had several children by her. And all those children were Edomites, man. Because what? He was an Edomite. All right? So going back into Matthew chapter 13, it says, verse 29, but he said, nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root out up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, which is the end of the world. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together for the first the tares and bind them in a bundle to burn them. And that's going to be in that nuclear fire. But gather wheat into my barn. Another parable was put forth, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among the herbs, becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Hold on, let me skip down to this. This is verse 38. It says the field is the world. So that field is the world, okay? The earth. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. The children of the kingdom are the Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So the only ones that's going to inherit the kingdom are Israelites, okay? But the tares are the children of the wicked one. And we know that the wicked one is Esau, okay? The enemy that sowed them is the devil, which again is Esau. The harvest is the end of the world, which we just said. And the reapers are the angels. So the angels are going to come down and they're going to reap. And they're going to reap the wheat, which is the Israelites. And they're going to burn the chaff or the tares, which are the Edomites and all the other nations, man. Because, Esau not the only one that sows seed amongst our nation. You got Ishmael in our neighborhoods having relations with the women and sowing seed, all right? When you read Matthew 21 and 31, it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. It says, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And we know that the sheep are the children of Israel. When you read St. Matthew's, I think it's Matthew's 10 and 5. So like, that's not it. 7. It's like Matthew's 7, 15. This is St. Matthew 7 and 15. Nope. Salakia Akim. Matthew's 10 and 6. Man. So St. Matthew's 10 and 5. It says, these 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So we know that the sheep are Israel, and we know that the goats are Edomites, man, because what Alexander is compared to be as a goat. Heathens are compared as a goat, which is Esau. It says, and before Salat, and it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon his throne in his glory. Salakia. Right. And before him shall he gather all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, which that's Israel, but the goats on the left, which is Esau. All right. And so that's what the Lord going to do. He going to separate the wheat from the chaff, man. The wheat from the tares. All right. And it was spoken about as a curse that Esau would do such a thing like this. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 30. It says, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. So during slavery, Jake would have wives, but another man would lie with them, which would normally be the Esau, the slave master. And that also, even in this modern times, we get wives of women, but they've already been popped by another man. But this, I'm just trying to stick on the tares and the wheat, right? So they said this was another paragraph out of this article off of Bolton.edu. It says the slave husband also had little control over master female slave sexual relations. Although a conjugal bond existed, the slave wife could still be used to fulfill the master's desires. So Jake would get married, but it was just like a conjugal visit, you know? She was still the master's possession, so he could do what he want with her. It says, we can obviously relate to the helpless hostility slave husbands must have felt in such situations. Sometimes the relations will become so striking that the husband would release his anger on a master in a form of violence. Okay? And it says, I was born on June 15, 1789 in Charles County, Maryland, on a farm belonging to Mr. Francis Newman, about a mile from Port Tobacco. My mother was a slave of Dr. Josiah McPherson, but hired to Mr. Newman, to whom my father belonged. The only incident I can remember which occurred while my mother continued on Mr. Newman's farm was the appearance one day of my father with his head bloody and his back lacerated. He was beside himself and mingled rage and suffering. The explanation I picked up from the conversation of the others only partially explained the matter to mine. But as I grew older, I understood it all. It seemed that the overseer had sent my mother away from the other field hands to a retired place, and after trying persuasion in vain, had resorted to force to accomplish the brutal purpose which he wanted to rape her. And he did. Her screams aroused my father at his distant work, and running up, he found his wife struggling with the man. Furious at the sight, he sprang upon the man. He sprang upon him like a tiger. In a moment, the overseer was down and mastered by rage. My father would have killed him, but for the entreaties of my mother and the overseer's own promise that nothing should ever be said of this matter. The promise was kept. Like most promises of a cowardly and debased as long as the danger lasted, you know. So obviously Jake probably and he ended up getting his back whooped, ended up getting beat uh, by Esau, you know. So nonetheless, you know, going back, Israel is the weak, and Esau and all the other nations that lay down with our women and had children, those are tares, man. And you got tares all over, man. You know, like again, some of those pictures that you see in the beginning, all of those children are tares, man. All those people are tares, and that's just some. That's not even the icing on the cake. You know, that's a small inkling. You know, because a lot of Edomites, they have children. Edomite men had children by Jake women, so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American women. You know, and there's tares of other nations too. You got all these other nations, they lay down with our women and they end up having children. All right, you know. So I just wanted to do a quick video. Hope brothers was edified. I know it ran a little long, you know, but I hope brothers was edified, man. Just a little quick glimpse in the tares in the wheat, man. You know, and the Lord's going to destroy all the tares, man. You know, so it's going to be a lot of black Edomites running around here, you know. Okay, and it's a lot of Edomite looking Jakes running around here too. All right, so with that, I want to give all praise and honor and glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and give double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who teach his word and rule well. Shalom to my fellow Akim, the hopeful elect. Shalom.